In the brutal world of Vikings, physical strength is not only an advantage, it is necessary for survival. If you cannot hold a shield, you are a liability. If you cannot swing an axe, you are a problem. And if you cannot walk, you are basically dead. So how does a boy born without legs that don't work not only survive this world, but eventually conquer it? We're going to talk about one of the most interesting, terrifying, and well-written characters in modern television, Ivar the Boneless. Now, a lot of people look at Ivar and just see the villain of the later seasons, a bloodthirsty sociopath with a god complex. But to label him as just a villain is like basically missing the entire point of his character arc. In my opinion, Ivar is an underdog, even if everyone sees him as like a bad guy. So yeah, let's talk about how the boy who was left out in the cold to die became the most feared man in the Viking world. Now, to understand his psychology, you have to look at the creator. And Ivar's creator was not just the gods, it was his father, Ragnar Lothbrok. So Ivar was born with brittle bone disease. So in Viking society, a deformed child was basically a curse, a burden that society simply could not afford. And Ragnar, the great pioneer, the man who looked at the sea and saw the future, looked at his newborn son and said, yeah, he's definitely not gonna make it. Now, Ragnar took baby Ivar out into the woods, laid him by a river, and left him to basically die. You know, I feel like he actually did that as an act of mercy because he didn't want his son growing up and living a life of pain and suffering. You could see the deep pain in Ragnar's eyes. He didn't want to do it, but I feel like he felt like he had no choice. Now, even though his mother Aslak saves him, that wound just never closes. Ivar spends his entire life trying to prove his worth to a father who basically threw him away, and a society that looks at him with pity. If you want to know why Ivar is so deeply insecure, why he constantly needs to prove he's the most vicious person in the room, it all goes back to the woods. He tries to compensate for the fact that, deep down, he still feels like that helpless baby crying on the ground. And Aslak's smothering love was not helping either. She treats him like a fragile idol, sheltering him from the harsh realities of their culture, but also reinforcing his physical isolation. And then Floki steps in as a surrogate father, feeding the boy's dark, fundamentalist Viking devotion. This trio of parental influences, Ragnar's rejection, Aslak's smothering love, and Floki's craziness, forges a perfect storm in Ivar's psyche, the mind as a weapon. Now, because Ivar cannot fight with his body, he's forced to fight with his mind, because that's all he could basically do. In a world of axes and shields, Ivar uses his intellect, while his brothers Bjorn, Ubba, and Fitzberg are learning how to parry blows and break shield walls. Ivar is observing and watching. He learns human psychology. He learns what makes people tick, what makes them break, and most importantly, what makes them terrified. Ivar realizes early on that if he cannot gain respect through physical strength, he will get it through pure fear. Now, you see this during his childhood when he murders another boy with a hatchet over a game. It's shocking, but for Ivar, it's a calculated survival mechanism. He is drawing a line in the sand. Do not pity me, fear me. This leads to the defining paradox of his character. His weakness is the exact thing that makes him indestructible. Because he cannot rely on his legs, his mind becomes sharper, crueler, and more strategic than anyone else's. The true turning point for Ivar, the moment that permanently sets him on his dark path, is when Ragnar finally returns to Kattegat, defeated, old, and despised. Ragnar wants to go back to England to die, but none of his strong, able-bodied sons will go with him. So only Ivar steps up. The journey to Wessex is important to his character development. Ragnar finally sees what we the audience see, Ivar's brilliance. Now, during this trip, Ragnar gives Ivar the ultimate validation. He looks at his son he once tried to kill and says the words that will echo through the rest of the series. You are not like them. You are special. Your deformity is your greatest strength. People will always underestimate you. Your anger is a gift. What is in here is a gift. When we get to the invasion of England and the Battle of York, Ivar's genius is fully unleashed. He outsmarts the Saxons, turning the city of York into a labyrinth of traps. But there is one specific scene that cements his legacy as a legendary character. The battle is intense. Ivar is knocked from his chariot. He is sitting on the ground. his legs useless. He is entirely helpless. But what does he do? He doesn't beg. He doesn't crawl away. He leans back, his face covered in blood, and he laughs. He screams at the top of his lungs, "Don't you know who I am? I am Ivar the Boneless! You can't kill me!" The Saxon soldiers literally back away in terror. He takes his absolute lowest, most vulnerable physical state and uses it to project an aura of immortality. In that moment, he proves Ragnar right. His mind and his sheer willpower are so overwhelming that fully armed warriors are terrified of a crippled man sitting in the mud. But what makes Ivar a great character is that the writers didn't just let him remain a perfect, infallible genius. Now, his rise to power in Kattegat shows the dark decay of his mind. So when you spend your entire life fighting from the bottom, climbing over the pity and disgust of everyone around you, you don't just want equality when you reach the top. You want submission. Ivar's belief that he is a god is super dumb, and that's what makes it brilliant. His god complex is a fragile shield constructed or made to protect a fragile ego. He alienates his brothers. He rules through sheer terror because terror is the only language he trusts and understands. He's so desperate to transcend his broken body that he literally convinces himself he is divine. He has won the world, but he has lost his humanity, his family, and ultimately his mind. In the end, Ivar's story in Vikings is a masterfully written tragedy about the cost of overcompensation. He had to be twice as smart, twice as ruthless, and 10 times as terrifying just to sit at the same table as able-bodied men. Is he a villain? Of course he is a villain. He did horrific, unforgivable things, but he is a villain we understand on a deeper level. We understand the pain of his childhood. We understand the desperation for his father's love. We cheer for him when he outsmarts arrogant kings, and we mourn for him when his paranoia consumes his soul. Ivar the Boneless is the ultimate proof that the most dangerous weapon is a brilliant mind that feels it has nothing left to lose.